know what else there is to say. Doing my best not to run away.
You're the night sky trying to make me see your stars, but the dark gets so lonely. Now I see violet, I can feel silence, and the dark's all that I see. When your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound, I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. Be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. You're the night sky hiding behind dark gray clouds. I can't figure you out now. I see all blue. There is so much cold in you, and the silence is so loud when you go. I just stay dancing with my shadow all day. Watch the tide. I can't find the point where our two paths align. But you're the night sky, I'm trying to see your stars, but I've always feared the dark. Now I see violet, I can feel your silence. You always feel so far when your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound. I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. Be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. Be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky.
I get lost inside my thoughts, and when I start to think, oh, the tunnel closest starts to end up on the brink. I tried so hard, but all these scars, they cut so deep, I bleed. I fell so fast from heaven, it's like someone clipped my wings. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe, and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye.
That can never change my mind.
And I've been chillin', watching the ocean with you. Baby, up with a slow motion crew. And we up in our cloudlands when people change, but not us. And we just chillin', kicking it, kissed by the sun. Could be soaked to the skin in the mall soon. I know she got the good vibes when seasons change, but we're the same. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. Cause you got me holding. And I'll be running, possessed by a low, low voodoo. Fired up like a wolf on a full moon. And we're stuck in a la la land. The tides will turn without us. And I'll be killing time like I might be a cartoon. Take it in real life like haiku. I know we got the good vibes when pieces fall right into place. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. Play me like a bass guitar, simmer down and mess me up, tripping like I'm Jimmy at Woodstock. Drive me around in your red Ford, shivers down my spinal cord. Oh, 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 oh. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it.
Here we go again. Trying hard, but you wanna be my friend. Ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. Here we go again. Call my bluff, I'ma be here till the end. I'm the one you ride, I'm the one you ride to. If you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out. Here we go again. Time is up and I'm calling up my friends. Ain't no wonder why, ain't no one to ride to. Here we go again. Call me up and you wanna be my friend. I'm the one you ride, I'm the one you ride to. If you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out. Look, if you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out.
I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only one. No one likes being lied to. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I wanna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head. I've been stuck on your memory, but it's not like I need it. And we may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I'm gonna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need
broken and alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Just stare, 'cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. My darling dear, you're never here. When I'm in pain, you hide and disappear. Like shadows in the atmosphere, charting the stratosphere. Yeah. I prayed for you and kept you near, in hopes you'd chase away my fears. I'm on my own, you made it so, and now I'm chasing nightmares. I used to run with you through the great big leaves, laugh at you when you laugh at me. Hope for us because I believe the home was just you and me. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh, I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh, oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me.
The swing at a wrecking ball, and I prayed for my downfall, and I found a way to reconcile, 'cause in my heart it's not worthwhile. It's a bloody battlefield where some go down, others heal. In the end it's all the same. All you can do is play the game. Oh, do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm sad to say I'm sorry, so lie. Pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. And so I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. Life kept spitting at my feet and forced me down a dead-end street when all I had went up in flames, burning only dark remains. I cover up every part of my skin, oh, 'cause I don't like the person within, oh. I know I'm the one to blame. All I can do is take the shame, oh. Do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm too sad to say I'm sorry, so lie and pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. Whoa, I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. So I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. A lie. I don't wanna live a sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. Oh no.
Empty hearts and neon lights. They're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone. Just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, oh. and fights, turning truth to lies. Gotta get up, stop wasting time. Yeah, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver, no more heartbreaks, tears, pain.
will take up this legislation later this week after gross, if not criminal, mismanagement of the crisis by the Trump administration. Americans have shown that they want competent leadership and decisive action to crush this virus and put the economy on the road to recovery. Against ongoing signs of systemic stress, putting a stop to the deregulation that preceded this crisis. The Fed must continue to be attentive to inequality as it oversees this recovery, taking the impact on consumers and small businesses into account when considering mergers in the financial industry. And the Fed must proceed with greater alacrity regarding climate risk in its supervision of financial institutions. The Fed has recently taken a few steps in this regard, but much more is needed to combat the systemic and extensional treat. I look forward to your testimony and to discussing these matters today. I now recognize the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, for 5 minutes.
Chairman Powell, I'd like to commend you again for your swift response to the pandemic. The Federal Reserve was the fastest acting part of the federal response, thanks to your foresight and leadership. As we've discussed previously, Chair Powell, there is a clear distinction between what is fiscal policy and within the purview of Congress, and what is monetary policy and within the purview of the Fed. I appreciate your work to protect the independence of the Fed, and I know that you'll continue to do so. We have politicians that are talking down our economy, even the Speaker of the House saying, quote, the economic crisis is accelerating, end quote. And they're saying this specifically to pass their spending package. Our economy is on the mend, despite what politicians parrot as their preferred narrative. The first phase of the storm is passing. Now we have to deal with the damage COVID wrought, and it did indeed bring significant damage. And the virus, the shutdowns, schools not reopening, the lack of childcare, all have had serious consequences. These are maladies which the Fed cannot fix. In fact, Congress doesn't seem to have the power to do it either. It's governors in the states they lead who are showing the path forward. Money alone will not fix it. Vaccines, testing, treatment, and data-driven public health decisions will have a larger impact than either monetary policy or fiscal policy at this stage of the game. What's called for is targeted temporary relief directly related to COVID, not a typical Keynesian stimulus bill in the name of COVID relief. To be clear, we know there are many Americans still suffering. Behind every statistic is a family that is still reeling from this crisis. For a year now, we've been working to reach those in need. As you've said, Chairman Powell, this is a tale of two recoveries. Employment for the top quartile of wage earners has fallen by 4%, while the bottom quartile has dropped by a full 17%. So let's dig deeper here. More than 4 million Americans have been unemployed for almost a year. In the restaurant industry alone, 1 out of 6 businesses have been shuttered since last March. And while the CBO projects the unemployment rate, which currently stands at 6.2%, which, by the way, is lower than the unemployment rate under the first 5.5 years of President Obama, that unemployment rate will continue to fall this year and to reach a pre-pandemic size of 2022 under the current, without any other additional fiscal action. There are millions of Americans, families juggling work, childcare, and paying and just praying that their schools will finally reopen. Yes, personal incomes have actually increased at the end of last year, and the personal savings rate stands at over 13%, a level not seen in 4 decades. Yet childcare costs have jumped by almost 50% since last year. A year ago, women outnumbered men in the workforce. And since the pandemic, 2.5 million women have left the workforce. Given the nature of the shutdowns, this temporary aid that we provided last year and the Fed's swift actions, they prevented the worst from possible outcomes from occurring in this crisis. Now we have to deal with the divide, the uneven recovery that has occurred. And as we exit this pandemic, we need to find innovative solutions that support finding employment for these Americans and bring those who exit the labor force completely. We need to bring them back in. And the Fed must also focus on regulatory flexibility and provide flexibility to financial markets to ensure that we have a less choppy recovery. And indeed, Chairman Powell, there are new challenges and choppy waters ahead. And I'm grateful for your steady hand and pragmatic leadership at the Federal Reserve and for our economy and for our government. Thanks so much, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the chairman of the subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy, the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chairman Powell, thank you for being here today. And let me echo our thanks for your incredible intervention and work in addressing the economic aspects of this pandemic. In 2008, the Federal Reserve took extraordinary actions, including the then controversial use of its emergency lending powers to rescue the financial sector. And the pandemic has shown us that the need for the Fed to engage in emergency intervention remains. When you were last testified before this committee in December, we discussed the wisdom or lack thereof of shutting down those emergency facilities before the pandemic was over. And then at the end of last year, we saw troubling signs on the horizon of elevated unemployment numbers and an uptick in business bankruptcy. So clearly we're not out of the woods. And if 2008 and 2020 have taught us anything, it is that crises happen and we need to prepare for them. Now, unlike in 2009, fiscal policy will be heavily deployed and our shoulder will be to the wheel. Nonetheless, the Federal Reserve is arguably the major player in our capital market. So I look forward to hearing from you today, Chairman, not just on where we are, but how this ends. How does it unwind? A look at page 43 of your monetary report shows the incredible interventions. And the question is, how does this unwind and where do we go from here? With that, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to echo the comments from my friend and Chairman Himes of the subcommittee. We thank you, Chairman Powell, for the extraordinary actions of the Board of Governors during 2020 in monetary policy and in the extraordinary facilities and using 13.3. And we also commend the Congress and the executive branch in 2020 for their fiscal response, which gave us the resources we needed to fight the pandemic and get our economy to the point it is today to open. So I agree with Chairman Himes that now it's time to look on the other side of this pandemic as we vaccinate America, as we get our businesses open, as we see state and local governments having far in excess of the tax revenues that they anticipated and people getting back to work. How do we safely open this economy, get those jobs available for those 10 million Americans still seeking employment? And I look forward to your testimony today. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to welcome to the committee our distinguished witness, Jerome Powell, Chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Chair Powell has served on the Board of Governors since 2012 and as its chair since 2017. Chair Powell has testified before this committee, and I believe he does not need any further introduction. So without objection, your written statement will be made a part of the record. I want to remind members that Chair Powell has a hard stop and will be with us for 3 hours until 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Chair Powell, you are now recognized to present your oral testimony.
Thank you and good morning to all. Chairwoman Waters, Ranking Member McHenry, and other members of the committee, I'm pleased to present the Federal Reserve's semi-annual monetary policy report. At the Federal Reserve, we are strongly committed to achieving the monetary policy goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment and price stability. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've taken forceful actions to provide support and stability, to ensure that the recovery will be as strong as possible, and to limit lasting damage to households, businesses, and communities. Today, I will review the current economic situation before turning to monetary policy. The path of the economy continues to depend significantly on the course of the virus and the measures taken to control its spread. The resurgence in COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths in recent months is causing great hardship for millions of Americans and is weighing on economic activity and job creation. Following a sharp rebound in economic activity last summer, momentum slowed substantially, with the weakness concentrated in the sectors most adversely affected by the resurgence of the virus. In recent weeks, the number of new cases and hospitalizations has been falling, and ongoing vaccinations offer hope for a return to more normal conditions later this year. However, the economic recovery remains uneven and far from complete, and the path ahead is highly uncertain. Household spending on services remains low, especially in sectors that typically require people to gather closely, including leisure and hospitality. In contrast, household spending on goods picked up encouragingly in January after moderating late last year. The housing sector has more than fully recovered from the downturn, while business investment and manufacturing production have also picked up. The overall recovery in economic activity since last spring is due in part to unprecedented fiscal and monetary policy actions, which have provided essential support to many households, businesses, and communities. As with overall economic activity, the pace of improvement in the labor market has slowed. Over the 3 months ending in January, employment rose at an average monthly rate of only 29,000. Continued progress in many industries has been tempered by significant losses in industries such as leisure and hospitality, where the resurgence in the virus and increased social distancing have weighed further on activity. The unemployment rate remained elevated at 6.3% in January, and participation in the labor market is notably below pre-pandemic levels. Although there has been much progress in the labor market since the spring, millions of Americans remain out of work. As discussed in the February Monetary Policy Report, the economic downturn has not fallen equally on all Americans, and those least able to shoulder the burden have been hardest hit. In particular, the high level of joblessness has been especially severe for lower wage workers and for African Americans, Hispanics, and other minority groups. The economic dislocation has upended many lives and created great uncertainty about the future. The pandemic has also left a significant imprint on inflation. Following large declines in the spring, consumer prices partially rebounded over the rest of last year. However, for some of the sectors that have been most adversely affected by the pandemic, prices remain particularly soft. Overall, on a 12-month basis, inflation remains below our 2% longer-run objective. While we should not underestimate the challenges we currently face, developments point to an improved outlook for later this year. In particular, ongoing progress in vaccinations should help speed the return to normal activities. In the meantime, we should continue to follow the advice of health experts to observe social distancing measures and wear masks. I'll turn now to monetary policy. In the second half of last year, the Federal Open Market Committee completed our first ever public review of our monetary policy strategy, tools, and communication practices. We undertook this review because the U.S. economy has changed in ways that matter for monetary policy. The review's purpose was to identify improvements to our policy framework that could enhance our ability to achieve our maximum employment and price stability objectives. The review involved extensive outreach to a broad range of people and groups through a series of Fed Listens events. As described in the Monetary Policy Report, in August, the committee unanimously adopted its revised Statement on Longer-Run Goals and Monetary Policy Strategy. Our revised statement shares many features with its predecessor. For example, we have not changed our 2% longer-run inflation goal. However, we did make some key changes. Regarding our employment goal, we emphasize that maximum employment is a broad and inclusive goal. This change reflects our appreciation for the benefits of a strong labor market, particularly for low and moderate income communities. In addition, we state that our policy decisions will be informed by our assessments of shortfalls of employment from its maximum level, rather than by deviations from its maximum level. This change means that we will not tighten monetary policy solely in response to a strong labor market. Regarding our price stability goal, we state that we will seek to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. This means that following periods when inflation has been running below 2%, Appropriate monetary policy will likely aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time. With this change, we aim to keep longer-run inflation expectations well anchored at our 2% goal. Well-anchored inflation expectations enhance our ability to meet both our employment and inflation goals, particularly in the current low interest rate environment in which our main policy tool is likely to be more frequently constrained by the lower bound. We have implemented our new framework by forcefully deploying our policy tools. As noted in our January policy statement, we expect that it will be appropriate to maintain the current accommodative target range of the federal funds rate until labor market conditions have reached levels consistent with the committee's assessments of maximum employment, and inflation has risen to 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time. In addition, we will continue to increase our holdings of Treasury securities and agency mortgage-backed securities, at least at their current pace, until substantial further progress has been made toward our goals. These purchases and the associated increase in the Federal Reserve's balance sheet have materially eased financial conditions and are providing substantial support to the economy. The economy is a long way from our employment and inflation goals, and it's likely to take some time for substantial further progress to be achieved. We will continue to clearly communicate our assessment of progress toward our goals well in advance of any change in the pace of purchases. Since the onset of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve has been taking actions to support more directly the flow of credit in the economy, deploying our emergency lending powers to an unprecedented extent, enabled in large part by financial backing and support from Congress and the Treasury. Although the CARES Act facilities are no longer open to new activity, our other facilities remain in place. Finally, we understand that our actions affect households, businesses, and communities across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We're committed to using our full range of tools to support the economy and to help ensure that the recovery from this difficult period will be as robust as possible. Thank you. I will look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. During our committee markup on February 10th, some members of our committee tried to suggest that further fiscal action was not needed because we are on a swift path to recovery. For example, it was noted that the unemployment rate in the United States is currently better than it had been for the first 5 years of the Obama administration. On that same day, you gave a speech that warned against this sort of top-line assessment of employment, noting that, quote, employment in January of this year was nearly 10 million below its February 2020 level, a greater shortfall than the worst of the Great Recession's aftermath, quote unquote. Chair Powell, do you believe our economy is in a healthier position right now than it was in 2014, several years into the recovery from the Great Recession?
I'm reluctant to make that comparison without thinking about it further. I will just, though, echo that we have 10 million fewer people working on payroll jobs than we had just 1 year ago today, and that the unemployment rate, the reported rate, is 6.3%. But if you include people who were in the labor force and indeed working in February and a couple of other adjustments, you get to almost a 10% unemployment rate. So there's a lot of slack in the labor market and a long way to go to maximum employment.
Thank you. In that same February 10th speech, you mentioned that, and let me quote, fully recognizing the benefits of a strong labor market will take continued support from both near-term policy and longer-run investments, quote unquote. Certainly, it will take a longer-run investments to achieve a true full employment economy that lifts workers' wages and finally closes the racial wealth gap. As Congress considers President Biden's American Rescue Plan, some of my colleagues have said we should, quote, wait and see, quote unquote, before spending more. Chair Powell, does the economy need additional fiscal support from Congress right now? Also, how critical is it for Congress to make longer run investments if we want to eliminate the racial wealth gap?
What I was really saying, Madam Chair, with that was that we've shown that we can, over the course of a long expansion, we can get to low levels of unemployment, and that the benefits to society, including particularly to lower moderate income people, are very substantial. We've shown that we can do that, but it's not really a great strategy to wait until the 8th or 9th year of an expansion to get those benefits. To really improve through the cycle, what I was saying in that set of remarks was that it'll take the private sector and it'll take investments from the public sector in, frankly, in the workforce, education, training, policies that support workforce participation, things like that. That's what I was really getting at there.
Response. And with that, I'm going to yield back my time, and I'm going to call on the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, who is the ranking member of the committee. You are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, I think your workforce speech your labor market speech was a very important one for all of us to take note of. And this recovery is different than the recovery from the financial crisis. It took much longer for us to get to this rate of unemployment than it did post-financial crisis. And as I mentioned in my statement, that the chairman of the committee was kind enough to quote from, is that the labor market now is better than it was in President Obama's first term of office. So these recoveries are different. Now, also, you had a broad-based recovery that took almost a decade to come about with post-financial crisis. But right now, you have segments of the economy, like you mentioned in your statement, Chair Powell, about hospitality. That is lagging because of state shutdowns. But in your testimony, you mentioned the Fed's exit strategy is contingent on meeting the Fed's goals for economic recovery. So how close is the economy to meeting the Fed's goals, and what does that look like?
So what we've said is that we would be purchasing assets at least at the current pace until we see substantial further progress toward our goals. So that's actual progress. That's not forecast progress. So we would want to see that we moved, it is what it sounds like. We would like to see incoming actual data that show us moving closer to our goals, both for inflation and for employment. And that's what it'll take. And I agree there's an element of judgment in that, but we will be communicating as clearly as possible and as far in advance as possible how we perceive the path of progress toward those goals.
Okay, consistent with your mandate, consistent with the mandate.
Very much so.
So what does the labor market look like when the Fed has achieved this goal? What does the labor market look like?
So I think it's easier to say with liftoff. We've been very specific with liftoff. We said in liftoff we'd need to see labor market conditions that are consistent with maximum employment, inflation at 2%, and inflation expected to move moderately above 2% for some time. Those are the conditions for liftoff, and they're quite specific. We haven't tried to be that specific about the pace of asset purchases, and we've just said substantial further progress is what we said.
Okay. So Chair Powell, yesterday you also spoke about the digital dollar being a high priority for the Fed. I think this is a national security issue, an economic security issue for sure. You said you're committed to transparency as you look into the digital dollar. I think that's important. I think that's very important for our system of government. I think it's a very important thing for an open society. But let's get into a few specifics on that if we can. What can the public expect in terms of learning the details of this project going forward? And are some more details, are you able to share with us today what we can expect from the Fed in this year, over the course of this year with the digital dollar project?
Yeah, so this is going to be an important year, and this is going to be the year in which we engage with the public pretty actively, including some public events that we're working on, which I'm not going to announce today, but there are things that we're working on. And it's the sense of this is not, here are the decisions we've made, what do you guys think? It's going to be, these are the trade-offs. They're both policy questions and there are technical questions that interrelate between those two. And they're very challenging questions. And so we're going to want to have a public dialogue about that with all of the interested constituencies. And that is the idea of what we're doing. In the meantime, we're working on the technical challenges and also collaborating with and sharing work with the other central banks around the world who are doing this. And, we will need, depending on what we do, we could well need legislative authorization for such a thing. That isn't clear until we see which way we're going. But so we will be engaging significantly with you and your colleagues on Capitol Hill as well.
Okay. So I think the project's vital. I think it's vital for American competitiveness. But I also, there's a fear that some want to use the digital dollar as a way to kill private sector innovation and in our banking system. Implementing modern monetary policy, modern monetary theory, for example, vis-a-vis Fed accounts. What do you say to folks hoping to exploit the digital dollar project in that way?
Well, one thing we need to be very mindful about is that we have a functioning financial system and a banking system and capital markets which intermediate between savers and borrowers, and they're the best markets and I would say the strongest banks in the world. We need to be careful with our design of the digital dollar that we don't create something that will undermine that very healthy market-based function. That's one thing,
okay,
for sure.
Now, final question here. You mentioned the labor market. We talked about the labor markets. As far as the fiscal side of the house, what are the things that we should be doing? What are the biggest challenges to getting people back to work?
Well, the single biggest, as you well know, unemployment and low activity is concentrated in that reasonably broad sector of the economy, in the service sector, where people gather closely together. Travel and entertainment, leisure, that whole hotels, those sorts of things. The single most important policy to getting those sectors reopened and getting people back to work, of course, is bringing the pandemic to a decisive end as soon as possible. And we're on the path to that, but we haven't done it yet. So I think it's important that we do quite decisively this year.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Thanks for your leadership.
Ms. Velasquez, who is also the chair of the Committee on Small Business, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chairman Powell, I heard you speak about the changes in the FOMC's monetary policy framework in your opening statement. It is clear that the pandemic has had an outside impact on women, minorities, and younger workers. How will the changes in the FOMC's monetary policy framework benefit workers in these groups?
So what we learned in the course of the last expansion was that we could have an unemployment at historically low levels without seeing troubling inflation arise. So we took that on board in creating our new framework. And as I mentioned in my remarks, that means that we won't tighten monetary policy just because of a strong labor market. We want to see either inflation moving up in a troubling way or other risks to the achievement of our goals. And that puts us in a place where we can have low levels of unemployment again. And when we get to those low levels, we see that they do benefit low and moderate income communities and women and minorities more than others who tend to benefit earlier in the expansion. So that plus what we said about maximum employment being a broad and inclusive goal, I think what I would point to.
Very good. Thank you. Chairman Powell, in May 2020, the OCC finalized a rule substantially revising the Community Reinvestment Act, which the Fed and the FDIC did not sign onto. In September 2020, the Fed proposed its own update to the CRA. With the change in the administration, do you expect the Fed to re-engage with the OCC and the FDIC on CRA rulemaking? And do you think there is an opportunity for a harmonized rule amongst all three agencies?
I think there is an opportunity for a harmonized rule among the three agencies. we are engaged, have been engaged, and continue to be engaged with the FDIC and the OCC, and we're working on that very thing.
Do you have a timeline?
I think we're just getting started.
Okay.
There will be a new comptroller, but nonetheless, we're working on it. And by the way, it will be one that has broad support among the community of intended beneficiaries, which was always the Fed's test and my test for what it would take for the Fed to support reform of CRA.
Glad to hear that, especially at this time when underserved communities, minority and female businesses and all that have been impacted by this pandemic. And CRA is a way to lift up communities of color, particularly. Chairman Powell, last week, Governor Brainard gave a speech on the role of financial institutions in tackling the climate challenge. In her speech, she stated, and I quote, "Climate change is already imposing substantial economic costs on the economy and is projected to have a profound effect on the economy at home and abroad." Would you agree with her statement, and can you give some examples of how you see that to be true?
Well, I think climate change is a very important issue. And if you'll allow me, I will start by saying that the nation's policy on climate change really needs to be set in the first instance by you, elected representatives in the House and Senate, and then by the administration through the agencies that Congress has created. Our role is really that of assuring that we are using our powers to carry out our mandate in supervising financial institutions to make sure that they're resilient to all risks, including that of climate change. That's what we're doing.
And can you explain the steps the Fed will be taking over the next 18 to 24 months to ensure the financial system can deal with the future financial and economic risks posed by climate change?
Yes, so we're doing right now a great deal of outreach and research and consultation. And by the way, the larger and medium-sized banks are doing the same thing. It is really time to have this, to do this work and to try to understand. Climate change is a longer run issue to deal with, and you will see that the financial institutions themselves are very focused on understanding how it will over time affect their business model. We're looking at the same thing from the standpoint of a regulator and supervisor. So research and basic work to lay out a framework, which will take some time, but it is time for us to do that.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlewoman from Missouri, Mrs. Wagner, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Chairman Powell. It's good to see you again. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for all that you and the Fed have done during this unprecedented pandemic. Under the Fed's average inflation targeting, you are looking for inflation to be, and I quote, moderately above 2% for some time to make up for undershooting inflation in the past. What does moderately above 2% for some time mean specifically? And why do we believe this is achievable if the FOMC's 3-year projections for quite some time now have been forecasting inflation, in fact, of 2% or less?
So on the first part, what does moderately mean? We don't have a formula, and we're not going to have a formula. The sense of it, though, is that we want inflation to average 2% over time. And the reason we want that is that we want inflation expectations to be anchored right at 2% and not somewhat below 2%, which is arguably the case now. That's really how we're looking at it. In terms of can we get there, I'm confident that we can and that we will, and we are committed to using our tools to achieving that. The 3-year time frame is actually an arbitrary 3-year time frame chosen by us, and we're just being honest about the challenge. We live in a time where there's significant disinflationary pressures around the world, and where essentially all major advanced economy central banks have struggled to get to 2%. We believe we can do it. Believe we will do it. It may take more than 3 years, but we'll update that every quarter. We update that assessment, and we'll see how that goes.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. I know you were asked a number of times by my colleagues in the Senate yesterday whether the Fed intends to extend the exclusion of low-risk assets such as treasuries and reserve balances from the supplementary leverage ratio. I strongly supported the agency's decision nearly a year ago to make this exclusion in recognition, I think, of the fact that banks were receiving just an unprecedented amount of new deposits, largely as a result of the Fed's actions that continue to put pressure on leverage ratios. You indicated, sir, yesterday that the Fed is still considering whether or not to provide an extension. Do you agree that the exclusion proved to be an important tool to preserve liquidity in the Treasury market?
Yes, I do agree to that. But I mean, we're just looking at this. I don't really have anything for you on that decision. But I didn't have anything yesterday, as you pointed out. So we're looking at that, and we know when the deadline is, and we're working on that, and we'll come forth with something relatively soon.
Well, I hope it's relatively soon, Mr. Chairman, because given that we're still considering new stimulus and other accommodations to continue economic recovery, I'm concerned, and I'm wondering if you are concerned about that arbitrarily removing the exclusion on March 31 could put additional pressure on the Treasury market. I mean, making sure that the SLR is extended, I think, is very, very important as we continue this recovery. And as I said, as further stimulus actions are considered and put into law. March 31 is nearly upon us, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, it is.
Oh, come on. Surely you can talk to us a little bit more about how important that was over the past year in terms of our banking industry and to keep liquidity in the market, given the large number of deposits that were extended to our banking community.
I'm just going to say that we're having discussions on it right now and internally here, and I really don't want to go any further than that. I'm sorry, but we're making a decision. We're considering it, and when we have a decision, we'll come forward. I'm sorry.
I respect that, and I look forward to that decision. And Madam Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who is also the chair of the subcommittee on investor protection, entrepreneurship, and capital markets, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, it's good to hear about your Fed Listens events, but I assure you your best Fed Listens event is right here today. You will not find 50 people in better touch and more representative of the 320 million Americans. I've grown old serving on this committee, and I've seen your predecessor come here, and Republicans attack them for what they regarded as a too expansionary monetary policy, whether the expansionary system be the traditional or the relatively newfangled quantitative easing. It's good for me to live long enough to see that many of the Republicans are moving in our direction toward the need for a somewhat more expansionary monetary policy. And I would hope that you would be looking at 2.25% rather than 2% as your target. I also commend you for the quantitative easing. It has allowed you to remit to the federal government $50 to $100 billion in each of the last several years. And so those who criticize your big balance sheet have been unwilling to identify which taxes they would raise in order to make up for that lost revenue. Also, your quantitative easing, big balance sheet approach is the only tool you have to influence long-term interest rates, which I think are much more important to our economy since you have to borrow long-term to build a factory or build a business. And I prefer monetary policy to an expansionary fiscal policy because all of your tools reduce the federal deficit, and all of our tools increase the long-term federal debt. Want to focus your attention on LIBOR. It now appears as if the LIBOR index will continue to be published till June of 2023. It's almost disappointing to get a reprieve and that it will reduce the pressure on us to actually solve this problem. But it does give us more time. And there is, of course, the Alternative Reference Rates Committee, ARC, and we have legislation to facilitate how to deal with what will be $2 trillion of existing contracts that don't have backup language. I wonder if you can confirm for me, in your view, is it necessary to have federal legislation to have a smooth transition after June 2023 when LIBOR is no longer published?
Yes, we think it will be. As you know, many LIBOR contracts are going to run off before then, but there'll be a hard tail, as we say, and we do think federal legislation is the best answer.
And there are those who think that that the private sector can just invent a synthetic LIBOR and that would solve the problem. Is that as good a solution as federal legislation?
No, federal legislation creating a path for a backup would be the best solution, we think.
Thank you. Now I want to move to something that we've talked about before, and that some will regard as a small issue, and that is the system for avoiding wire fraud. When we've talked about this earlier this month, where usually it's somebody trying to buy a home the first time ever, when they'll remit $10, $20, $30, $50,000 for the down payment. It's their life savings. And they're tricked into wiring the money to the wrong account number, and they lose it forever. Now you're developing the new FedNow system, and your bureaucrats have told us that they don't want to engineer that system to avoid this tragedy that occurred, as I said, affecting $150 million just last year. That they don't want to do the really simple thing of just saying that when you remit money, you identify not only the account number you're sending it to, but the name of the person you're sending it to. And I know your bureaucrats will tell you they don't want to do it. I wonder whether you'll go back to your agency and get personally involved and push them to avoid this tragedy. I don't think your successor should have to, face people at the next Fed Listen session, maybe 10 years from now, who have lost their homes as a result of this. Can you commit to getting personally involved and having a system that will hopefully protect homeowners or home buyers?
So I think, as you know, we've looked carefully at this and concluded that payee matching is not the best way to do it. And there are just problems in the U.S. system, but we have other ways to do it well. I'll be happy to go back and revisit that, though.
If there's another way, let me know what it is, because your staff just tells me they don't want to.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Lucas, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chairman Powell, you know I have a tendency to focus on those things that affect my people back home up and down Main Street and across the 3rd District of Oklahoma. So let's discuss for a moment. When you were last before the committee in June, you noted that the U.S. banking system has been a source of strength during the pandemic. The Fed's monetary policy report released on February 19 reaffirmed this point, stating that institutions at the core of the financial services system remain resilient. Do you continue to believe that banks are a source of strength? And will you elaborate both on what that means for the economy and for banks' abilities to lend, yes, absorb losses potentially too, and provide liquidity in distressed markets?
Yes, so we've, like you know, we spent, and the bank spent 10 years in a strengthening process, higher capital, better risk management, higher liquidity, all of those things. And then we received a world historical sized shock in the form of the pandemic. And I think, essentially close to a year into it, almost exactly a year into it, we see so far, what we see is that our banks have held up quite well. And their capital, the big banks' capital has actually increased over the course of the last year, while they've also taken 100 billion plus worth of reserves against losses. And so they are able to keep lending. They're not a source of weakness. At the beginning of the pandemic, they were very important because they did absorb that huge flow of deposits, and they made all of those loans as companies pulled down their lines of credit. Now, those were paid back early on, but at the very beginning, when it mattered a lot, they were a source of strength. So I think all of that is right. We've always got to continue to be vigilant on those things. But a first draft of history is that the banks are strong, and I would say the same for small and medium-sized banks as well. Have generally held up well. There are going to be issues, and as we come out of this, there are going to be businesses that fail, and there will be losses. But it's quite different, a very, very different situation than we had after the global financial crisis.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, let's discuss for a moment a topic that's very important, not only to me, but my friends in the majority on the Financial Services Committee. The national unbanked rate has been falling steadily for the past decade. And since the last calculated in 2019 sets at about 5.4%. Still, this represents more than 7 million U.S. households without a checking or savings account. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to contribute to an increase in the rate of unbanked households. Chairman, what would you suggest to reduce the adverse impact on the unbanked and underbanked in the aftermath of the pandemic to ensure that no one is left out of the economic recovery?
I think it's a serious problem to address. We tend to address it through our community affairs and efforts to make sure that, fair lending policies and things like that. I also think that there's more that Congress can do, I'm sure, to assure that people have, education around financial matters. And the other piece of it is, there are people at the lower end of the income spectrum who are living hand to mouth. We need a strong recovery. We need continued support for monetary policy, and we'll be providing that as well.
One last question, Chairman, and it impacts the ability of every Main Street to function. According to FDA, the United States administered more than 63 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. Chairman Powell, can you expand on how important to the economic recovery or how dependent the recovery is on ramping up that manufacturing and distribution?
Yes, this is the weakness we see in our economy now is unusually concentrated in a set of industries that involve people getting really close together. Hotels, restaurants, travel, entertainment, all those places. And that's millions of people who aren't working and businesses that may have been in business for generations going out of businesses. That's what that is. And the way to get after that is through by successfully, decisively bringing the pandemic to an end as soon as possible. That's the single best growth and economic and prosperity creating measure that any of us can undertake. And that is the vaccination. It's continuing to observe social distancing and wearing masks. And hopefully we're on that road now. And if we are, we're going to see, there's grounds for optimism in the second half of the year for the economy.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, who is also the chair of the subcommittee on oversight and investigations, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I thank the witness for appearing. I'm always honored to have him here before the committee. My question has to do with the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This is an initiative that was started under a Republican administration. It has served us exceedingly well, and the chairwoman, with her insight and foresight, has expanded this program to make sure that it covers women and people of color to a greater extent. We're talking about having this initiative be funded with $10 billion, and this is in the COVID package. And this $10 billion can drive up to $100 billion of private sector investments in these small businesses. States would be required to submit a plan, as well as other jurisdictions, on how expeditiously these funds can be delivered to help small businesses respond to and recover from the pandemic. A plan to encourage participation of MDIs, minority depository institutions, as well as CDFIs, community development financial institutions, would also be a part of this. Mr. Chairman, my question to you is simply this. How important is it that small businesses receive these capital investments? They sometimes find it exceedingly difficult to acquire funds of this type, the type that we have in this package. How important is it that these funds during this pandemic get to these small businesses?
Well, small businesses are under a lot of pressure in this at the current time, more so than many of the larger businesses that had resources to get through this. I would say MDIs and CDFIs are very important channels for reaching them. It's not appropriate for me to take a position on this particular provision and its inclusion in the in legislation. But I would just say that it is important for small businesses, and you mentioned MDIs and CDFIs. We, as you know, we work very closely with those organizations and think highly of the contribution they make to our economy.
Yes, sir, and I concur with what you said about working closely with them. I happen to be aware of some of your good works. The community banks, as you know, I'm very much concerned about them, and some of them are on the margins. And this type of assistance to some of these smaller banks can be of great help to them. I don't want you to comment on a specific bank or specific banks in general, but I am concerned about the need to maintain these institutions that have a niche. They have a clientele that somehow and sometimes will not be met. Their needs won't be met if they don't have these institutions that are in the communities. Have you found that it's good to have these institutions in these communities where the need is not always met?
Yes, I mean, we think community bank.
morning. My name is Mike, and I will be your conference operator today. Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Hyliion Holdings fourth quarter and full year earnings conference call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. After the speaker's presentation, there will be a question-and-answer session. To ask a question during the session, you will need to press star 1 on your telephone. Please be advised that today's conference is being recorded. If you require any further assistance, please press star 0. I would now like to hand the conference over to your speaker today, Greg Stanley, Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hyliion Holdings fourth quarter and full year 2020 earnings conference call. With me today is Thomas Healy, our Chief Executive Officer, and Sherry Baker, our Chief Financial Officer. During today's call, we will make certain forward-looking statements regarding our future business expectations, which involve risk and uncertainties. Forward-looking statements are predictions, projections, and other statements about future events that are based on current expectations and assumptions, and as a result are subject to risk and uncertainties. Many factors could cause actual future events to differ materially from the forward-looking statements on this call. For more information about factors that may cause actual results to materially differ from forward-looking statements, please refer to the earnings press release we issued today, as well as our filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Forward-looking statements speak only as of the date they are made. You are cautioned not to put undue reliance on forward-looking statements. We undertake no duty to update this information unless required by law. With that, I now hand the call over to Thomas Healy.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hyliion's fourth quarter and full year 2020 earnings call. During the quarter, we continued to make significant steps forward to advance our mission of bringing electrified powertrain solutions to the commercial vehicle space. I will start off today's call with an update on our key product and commercialization milestones and partnerships that we have developing, touch on some of the key executive hires in this quarter, and close with a discussion on our go-forward strategy. First, I'd like to acknowledge our outstanding team at Hyliion and thank our employees for all the progress that we have made while dealing with these challenges of the pandemic. 2020 brought unforeseeable disruption to the world, but I'm grateful for our team's dedication as we work to revolutionizing the powertrain market. Turning to slide 4, I would like to begin with our hybrid powertrain solution and the progress we have made in the fourth quarter. As a reminder, our hybrid powertrain can be installed on new trucks at the OEM or be retrofitted onto existing vehicles. Over the long term, we expect installations to be done at the OEM or mod center with new trucks coming equipped with our systems from the outset. And we are making headway in developing important relationships to further our commercialization strategy. Fleet utilization of our hybrid solution in the fourth quarter was strong, and I am pleased to report that we achieved our goal of installing 20 hybrid units on trucks in 2020, with 7 of those units installed in the fourth quarter. We continue to target large fleets that are innovative thought leaders and look for us to help them enter the world of electrification. Response to our hybrid solution has been extremely encouraging, and right now we are focused on letting fleets experience our game-changing product and making sure we are partnering with early adopters that are strong candidates for conversions into larger customers over time. Turning to slide 5, as we continue to evolve our hybrid offering, we recently announced our next-generation battery module. This battery includes longer life, faster charging rates, and improved safety. Our battery pack integrates industry-leading LTO cells from Toshiba, which are known for their high quality and safety characteristics. As for longer life, testing has shown that we expect to achieve up to 5 times as much cycle life compared to other conventional EV batteries, which may allow the batteries to outlive the life of the truck in some instances. With regards to charging rate, our battery is able to recharge in only 8 minutes, an unprecedented number compared to most other batteries, which will allow us to rethink asset utilization and uptime. The development of this next-generation battery module represents key milestones in the hybrid commercialization process, further strengthening our overall technology platform as we innovate future solutions. While our initial focus for this battery is internal use, we anticipate that there are other marketable use cases for this battery technology, particularly in applications that don't have a lot of time to recharge. As an example of this, think of a yard tractor. Their goal is to utilize this asset 24/7. With our battery, you can recharge that unit while the operator is getting a cup of coffee. One additional advantage to our battery system is around utilizing smaller battery packs, which is important right now when the industry is being faced with an anticipated shortage of battery cells. Hyliion's focus is to utilize small battery packs that consistently get recharged as the vehicle is in operation, as opposed to having a large battery pack that gets recharged once a day and carries all that energy around in the battery. By leveraging this strategy and taking advantage of the battery characteristics mentioned above, our Hypertruck ERX solution utilizes a battery that is approximately 1/20th the size of a conventional EV truck battery, allowing us to deploy many more units on the road while utilizing less batteries. Overall, I'm incredibly excited about our battery technology and what it can bring to the market. Now let's turn to slide 6. On our last earnings call, we expressed that we'd be making some key additions to the Hyliion leadership team over this past quarter, and I am pleased to share that we have accomplished this with much success. I'm excited to have further expanded the Hyliion executive team with the hiring of Jose Oxholm, our Vice President, General Counsel, and Chief Compliance Officer, Bobby Cherian as Senior Vice President of Sales and Supply Chain, and Matt Lose as Senior Vice President of Marketing. And lastly, I'm thrilled to introduce Sherry Baker as Chief Financial Officer, who joins me today on our call. Each of these executives brings decades of industry experience and will be critical to the success and growth of our commercialization strategy. I'd like to now transition to where we are in the commercialization of our core product lines. Let's start with the hybrid solution on slide 8. We are in a phase today where we are deploying low volumes of units of our current generation product with industry-leading fleets in order to seed the market and garner customer interest. In order to scale into production, we've decided to undertake some design changes and improvements of the system. We plan to launch a next generation of the hybrid solution that will include improved packaging for easier installation and manufacturing. It will feature our next generation battery modules, and we are improving the software and data analytics around this generation of the product as well. We have experienced some delays in the commercialization process of this system, but we are on track to be able to deploy units this calendar year. With the onset of this system, it will then allow us to begin to scale volumes of our hybrid systems deployed with customers and truly move into volume manufacturing. To assist with our timing plans and PMO strategy, we have engaged one of the industry-leading consulting firms to work closely with us to ensure that we have a robust and achievable timing plans in place. We have also expanded the engineering team with a significant amount of talented team members who bring skills and past experiences of working in the automotive space. One key addition to highlight is that Carrie Gadsky will be joining us starting next month to assist with the commercialization efforts. Carrie is a former chief engineer for Daimler Freightliner and has brought numerous trucking solutions to market before. Now let's shift to the commercialization of the Hypertruck ERX. Our team is progressing nicely with the commercialization efforts of this product, and we are pleased to share that we are receiving a significant amount of customer support and interest in the solution. As we've previously shared, we will be deploying initial customer demonstration units later this year to begin showcasing the benefits of this product. Over the past quarter, we have been working closely with fleets across the U.S., and we have selected our initial set of launch partners who will be taking delivery of these initial vehicles. We've selected these fleets not only based on the number of trucks that they operate, but also because of their focus on improving climate change and focus on being early adopters of electrification. We will begin showcasing some of these partner fleets in the near future. Once we begin to deploy these demo trucks later this year and going into next year, then we will look to begin commercialization of the product in 2022 for larger quantity deliveries to fleets. As for the engineering commercialization efforts that we have underway, we are not only utilizing our own team, but we have engaged outside consulting resources such as FEV and others to assist as well. We are currently in the process of building more vehicles for testing and validation and going through a selection of key suppliers who will enable us to be able to achieve volume commercialization. The next batch of trucks that we are currently building will start hitting the road towards the middle of this year. As we've been progressing through the commercialization process, we realized that one of the key factors of deploying our system is to be able to install it on brand new chassis that are made by today's truck OEMs. We are excited to announce that the initial Hypertruck ERX builds will be on Peterbilt chassis. We have been working closely with Peterbilt to establish the chassis specifications that are ideal for the Hypertruck ERX powertrain, and we have placed our initial order of trucks through Peterbilt. We will not only utilize these vehicles for our own testing and validation, but then also as we move into customer demonstrations. I'd now like to shift gears and discuss in more detail some of the roadmap that we have previously laid out for the Hypertruck. We see the Hypertruck powertrain as one that is applicable and realistic today, but also one that can evolve with ever-changing technology and infrastructure advancements, especially as we consider a hydrogen future. First, it's important for us to start off by discussing recharging and refueling infrastructure, which is often the #1 hurdle towards adopting electrified powertrains. We previously discussed with the Hypertruck ERX powertrain that leveraging RNG and CNG infrastructure is actually working to our advantage. With over 700 stations already built out across North America and a robust amount of natural gas pipelines across the country, fleets are able to adopt a solution like this today and not have to worry about having places to fuel their trucks. As we look at hydrogen, North America is starting from nearly scratch when it comes to infrastructure. Currently, there are not hydrogen refueling stations for trucks in existence. Pipelines and transport of hydrogen is not established, and there is not a significant amount of clean hydrogen made today. While we believe this market is evolving at an ever-increasing pace, we also believe that there are many years of development still ahead of us that need to happen before the industry shifts to volume adoption. With electric recharging, we do already have a robust electric grid established, but we'll need to improve transmission lines going into recharging locations as well as build out the stations themselves. While we believe that all three of these solutions will evolve in the years ahead, natural gas infrastructure is available and ready today, while the other two solutions will take time to establish and still need to achieve significant cost savings to become cost competitive. To give an example of this, it wasn't until a little over a year ago that the number of available Tesla supercharging locations for passenger cars surpassed the number of already existing natural gas refueling stations for trucks. On slide 13, we'd like to share what we believe will be the future of trucking as we shift towards electric. We believe that local delivery and final mile will be the first to adopt BEV trucks, and that will transition over time into the regional haul market. But as we start looking at mileage greater than this, the weight, the cost, and the size of the battery packs do not lend themselves to this type of application. Thus, we believe that an electric range extender vehicle, such as the ERX or a fuel cell truck, will be applicable. And going back to our previous slide, these vehicles start off by leveraging RNG and CNG as the fuel source to recharge the batteries, and then will evolve into hydrogen over time. So shifting to slide 14, what is very unique about the Hypertruck ERX solution is that it actually has the same vehicle architecture as a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, but it just utilizes a different generator. So in Hyliion's case, as the market evolves and the infrastructure is built out, Hyliion will be able to keep most of its powertrain the same and just replace the natural gas generator with a hydrogen fuel cell and be able to compete in this market as well. We believe this is a key advantage and differentiator for Hyliion, as we will be able to begin shipping units, advancing the powertrain technology, and achieving revenue, while some of our competitors will be hindered by the lack of hydrogen infrastructure and the time it takes to build out. Lastly, I'd like to share with you the approach to the generator solution that Hyliion is pursuing. As technology continues to advance, we plan to progress our powertrain to having a fuel-agnostic generator that can run on both RNG and CNG, as well as on hydrogen. This solution will offer fleets benefits as it will allow fleets to source the fuel that is most economical and advantageous for their use case. And lastly, we see that the long-term future as a hydrogen fuel cell solution, and with some technology advancements, it will be able to achieve the greatest performance efficiency. All of these solutions bring forward significant improvements around emissions compared to trucks that are on the road today. As we continue forward with these solutions, Hyliion will be collaborating with others as well as establishing our own technology in order to make sure that we are offering the strongest technology available. In summary, 2020 was a truly transformative year for Hyliion and in turn the EV trucking space. We delivered initial units to key customers, advanced our commercialization strategy, and scaled our organization to prepare for growth. We enter 2021 well-positioned with the resources, team, and strategy to advance our commercialization goals, and particularly our expected launch of the Hypertruck ERX later this year. Now I want to welcome Sherry to Hyliion for her first Hyliion earnings call. Sherry has nearly 2 decades of experience in finance and accounting leadership, as well as a strong understanding of investor relations, M&A, and manufacturing operations. Sherry served as CFO of PGT Innovations, a publicly traded company, and oversaw the company's finance function and strategy. Sherry has a proven track record of helping to drive profitable business growth and will play a critical role in Hyliion's success. I also want to thank Greg Vandeveer, our former CFO who recently retired, for his role in shaping our business and establishing a first-class team and strong foundation for Sherry moving forward. With that, I would like to turn it over to Sherry to run through the fourth quarter and full year numbers.
Thank you, Thomas, for the kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to be joining the Hyliion team at a very exciting time for the company as it revolutionizes the transportation industry. The opportunity to join this high-functioning, mission-based team is incredibly compelling, and I look forward to working with all of you, our investors and analysts, as we transform the Class 8 market in the months and years ahead. Let's now turn to our results for both the fourth quarter and full year 2020. After that, I'll discuss our capital structure and our look ahead. Starting on slide 17 with the fourth quarter results, our team continued to invest in R&D as we continue executing against our product development roadmap. R&D spending was $4.5 million, an increase of $1.6 million sequentially and $1.9 million year over year. G&A spending was centered around implementing the necessary infrastructure to advance our commercialization activities and the ongoing influx of talent to further enhance and operationalize the necessary public reporting framework. For the quarter, G&A spend was $5.9 million, an increase of $3.7 million sequentially and $5.1 million year over year. Non-operating expense was $10.2 million, up from $4.1 million in Q3, due to a loss on extinguishment of debt of $10.2 million in connection with the business combination, offset by a decrease in interest expense of $2.2 million and change in fair value of the convertible notes payable derivative liabilities of $1.8 million. Overall, Hyliion reported a net loss of $20.5 million compared to a net loss of $9.1 million in Q3 and $4.1 million from a year ago. Turning to our full year results, while the pandemic presented unforeseen challenges, the Hyliion team continued to press forward with its mission by completing the business combination and becoming a publicly traded company, setting the stage to disrupt the transportation industry. For the full year, R&D expenses were $12.6 million, driven by increased expenditures for external consultancy and components utilized in the development process in our efforts to finalize the design of our hybrid system and continue the design and testing of our Hypertruck ERX system during 2020. G&A expenses were $9.6 million, driven by additional costs incurred to operate as a public company, which include increased expenditures for personnel and benefits, increased expenditures for directors and officers insurance, increased expenditures for legal and professional fees, and other corporate-related expenses. Non-operating expense was $17 million, driven by a loss on extinguishment of debt in connection with the business combination and other expenses associated with the convertible debt. As a result, our net operating loss for 2020 was $39.2 million. Turning to our capital structure and balance sheet, on October 1st, we completed our business combination with Tortoise, yielding approximately $520 million of proceeds net of transaction expenses. And in early January, we announced the results of our public warrant redemption, which helped us raise an additional $141 million. The sum of this capital provides the company with a strong foundation to execute and deliver against our product development and commercialization goals. We are focused on developing a scaled infrastructure led by an innovative and industry-leading team that will help us capture the robust and growing opportunity within the Class 8 market. As of year-end 2020, we held cash and cash equivalents of $390 million. And turning to slide 18, while we are not providing formal financial guidance at this time, our previously communicated SG&A estimate of approximately $140 million for 2021 remains largely unchanged. As we continue building out our detailed commercialization strategy, we'll provide any appropriate updates to our expense estimates and progress against the key commercialization milestones Thomas referred to throughout today's call. Once we begin to deploy these demo trucks later this year and going into next year, then we will look to begin commercialization of the product in 2022 for larger quantity deliveries to fleets. This concludes our prepared remarks. And now I would like to turn the call back over to the operator to open the line for questions.
As a reminder, to ask a question, you will need to press *1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question, press the pound or hash key. In order to allow everyone time for questions, we ask that you please limit your questions to one question and one follow-up. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from Brian Johnson from Barclays.
Thank you. Just want to drill down into the battery pack announcement, which would seem to get the market excited, at least briefly. But that could have just been a press release triggered buying. I think the more fundamental question is, what does this do to the TCO for a fleet operator versus the prior battery? That's one. And kind of two, when you put together the midterm outlook for commercialization and the sales numbers, where you could, this battery obviously didn't come out of nowhere, but would those numbers include the expected benefits of this battery and kind of, to my first question, improving the TCO for fleets and therefore your sales?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So maybe to first touch on a little bit of the battery announcement. So we see this new battery module as a continued evolution of the battery module and pack designs that we've been doing here at Hyliion. And, in terms of how that's going to affect the TCO numbers of our hybrid and hypertruck product, it doesn't necessarily affect the payback numbers for fleets. It really just affects the performance of the product and allows us to get longer life, better performance out of the solution, and make sure that our, as mentioned during the call, our goal is that these batteries can actually, in some instances, outlive the life of the vehicles here. So, we're really seeing this as a technology that is, an advancement of the existing systems that we have today, not necessarily changing the TCO numbers. But to the second part of your question, we do see this module as something that we can expand into other markets as well. Initially, it was designed specifically for our solutions, but going forward here, obviously having an 8-minute rechargeable battery, being able to really push the life of these cells, that opens up some really unique opportunities into other markets, and that's something that we are going to be pursuing and exploring as well going forward here. But just to reiterate, the initial focus really is on integrating this into our own product, and then in out years we see that being able to be applicable for other markets. I don't believe that those were initially kind of assumed in our business plan as we were bringing this to market. It was something that we knew that there was an opportunity here to be able to sell our batteries into other markets, but this is the first time that Hyliion's coming forward and announcing that we will be expanding that market opportunity.
And by other markets, would those be other commercial vehicle markets or light vehicle or energy storage or uses beyond, or industrial uses?
Well, I think one of the initial areas here is definitely in the commercial vehicle space, because this space, which is very different than passenger car, has a strong focus on just asset utilization. And so, as we can look at really being able to recharge these vehicles fast, that allows us to keep the trucks or vehicles up and running for more hours of the day. One of the challenges with conventional BEV vehicles with conventional batteries is that you'll have to down that vehicles in some instances for hours a day just to be able to recharge it. And that has a cascading effect, right? That means that fleets are then going to have to go buy more assets in order to be able to have vehicles for their drivers to be able to drive while other vehicles are getting recharged. So it kind of has a cascading effect. If we can pull in our battery technology, have that fast recharge, as mentioned earlier, you can, recharge that vehicle then when the driver is on a break, grabbing a cup of coffee, which really opens up a lot of opportunities for fleets. So I think we do see the initial market opportunity here really being in the commercial vehicle space.
As a reminder, to ask a question, press *1 on your telephone. Your next question comes from Mark Delaney from Goldman Sachs.
Thanks very much for taking the questions, and good morning. I was hoping to ask on the ERX. You talked about continuing your plans to bring that product to market, and articulated a plan to start to having some initial target fleet customers in mind for that product. Can you talk a little bit more about how long you think it may take to go through that process where customers have the ERX truck? How long, based on your conversations with customers, do you think they'll want to go through sampling before they maybe be ready to move into volume purchasing?
Thanks, Mark. So one of the things that we had highlighted in the call was just that over the past quarter here, we have actually selected the fleets that we're going to be working with to be able to roll out the Hypertruck ERX in the demo trucks here. And so that's obviously a huge, progression forward for us, because now we have the fleet base that we can really work with in order to deploy these vehicles. In the near future here, we will be sharing more about that to the market of, who some of those fleets are that we're working with. But, we're really excited about the group of individuals that we've been able to pull forward. And as mentioned before, it wasn't really just about what the fleet size was. While that was a factor in kind of joining with these fleets, it was also looked at as to, what are the sustainability goals that these fleets have, and what's their goals in terms of moving towards electrification. So, right off the bat, we've got a strong foundation here of fleets that we can be deploying these solutions with, and then also we see those fleets as being the ones that we'll be able to scale volumes with. In terms of the time it's going to take them, we'll be starting to do initial demo deliveries towards the end of this year and then rolling into next year. And I think for fleets, they really look at this as, it's probably a 3 to 6 month, experience for them of actually taking delivery of the trucks, trying them out in their own operations. Our goal is also to garner feedback from these fleets as well, right? We want to make sure that this product is meeting their use cases and applications and needs. And so, 3 to 6 months of going through that cycle and then being able to come back and starting to deliver more units into their operations.
That's very helpful. Thanks for all the details. And for a follow-up question was on the hybrid product. You mentioned there's been some delay in commercialization of that, but also you're working to develop a new, the next generation version with the new battery module. Maybe you could go into more depth on that. What led to the delay in commercialization? And as you introduce this new version, do you think that will be one that will allow you to recognize revenue? And if so, do you have any timeline you can provide on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the hybrid development of the next generation, some of the delays just came from really expounding and making a more robust testing and validation plan before rolling this solution out to the market. We brought in some consultants over this past quarter that have been assisting us at really looking at what are the industry best practices and protocols that we need to follow to make sure that these systems are fully validated and ready for this market. As I'm sure you well, I mean, this is the road conditions out there are tough, right? I mean, you got salt spray, you have rain and snow, and there's a lot of elements that these products need to be developed for. And so one of the things that we've done is gone back and looked at that testing and validation plan. We've expanded the scope of that some, as well as implemented new phase gates of when when we're rolling the product out, different stages that we're going to go through. And that's what led to the delay of the development of it. It's really not a technology risk or a material change to the product or anything like that. It was more just having a robust rollout plan here that follows the industry's best practices. Then as we go forward with launching the next generation hybrid system, that is when we'll start recognizing revenue on those solutions. And one of the things that we're doing with the products we're shipping today is we're starting to build that strong foundation of fleets that have experienced the product. We're going through getting some repeat orders with those solutions, and then we'll be able to scale that over time with these fleets and adopt more of them into their operations. So we're really excited about the next generation hybrid system coming to market here. We see that there's some huge advancements in it around the new battery module, having a new e-axle, some improved software and data analytics. The one delay that we're just experiencing is the time it takes to get the product commercialized and ready for the market.
And that was our last question at this time. I will turn the call back over to Thomas Healy for closing remarks.
I appreciate everyone joining us on our fourth quarter and year-end 2020 review. 2020 was obviously a monumental year for us as we took Hyliion public and have made some great advancements in the products that were announced that we're going to be bringing to market here and some of the relationships that we've been able to build in this industry. I look forward to a very exciting year ahead for us here of 2021, and we'll be chatting again in the next quarter's earnings call. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's conference call. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.
How's it going, everybody? Before I start this video, I just need to say this is all for entertainment purposes and that any trades at risk I make are solely my own and not a recommendation. I am not a financial advisor. With that said, I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to keep up to date with Hyliion and other stocks that I like.
And then we can start looking at really cool things like, are there opportunities to use these batteries in second life, right? Could you do grid storage opportunities?
So after waiting after hours and waiting some more, Hyliion dropped an EPS of negative 14 cents at around 7 p.m. Now, one analyst that I could find reported that they estimated a loss of negative 12 cents. But mostly around the board, from Yahoo to Robinhood to MarketWatch, all had an estimated EPS of negative 37 cents. Now, I might be misunderstanding that, but to me it looks pretty straightforward. It shows we're moving in the right direction. Now, some might argue, well, Henry, they lost negative 5 cents a year ago. Well, what happened a year ago? Did we already forget? The CV-19 shut down businesses across the board, and I don't doubt that Hyliion was impacted when this happened. Even though I can't find irrefutable proof, like an article proving that Hyliion shut down their business, one of the final lines in the financial summary shows a proceed from the Paycheck Protection Program for $908,000. So more than likely, this slowed them down a bit in 2020, and they still managed to hit their goal. Now, let's argue the fact that they lost negative 47 cents just a quarter ago, and here we sit now at negative 14 cents a share. This is a win. I won't let anyone sell it short. They have plenty of cash on hand and they met their 2020 goals. Check one off the list. Now, we're moving into commercialization. This is a big step, and according to the Hyliion chart, we are estimating 300 sales of the electrified powertrain solution. Now, that's just an estimate, you guys, but I believe Thomas is going to deliver. Why do I say that? Let's look on their website. Thomas is hiring over 24 new recruits. He's spending money on R&D. He's innovating. Some might be upset that Thomas isn't pumping the stock like Nikola did in the early days, or that it isn't running on rumors or a promise of a potential contract like, Workhorse. My God, I feel bad for anyone who bought in at the top, and they're out there. Now I just want to read over the executive commentary that Thomas Healy put up on the website, and it goes, quote, "We concluded a momentous year for Hyliion and significantly advanced our commercialization strategy. I am pleased with all that we have accomplished as our team continues to adapt in this unprecedented environment. We enter 2021 with strong financial and operational resources and an established network of strategic partners. The powertrain technologies we have already deployed and those that we will bring to market further differentiate Hyliion and reflect our unique competitive advantages. We are delivering proven, cost-effective, and eco-friendly solutions that we anticipate will electrify and revolutionize the commercial transportation industry." On February 11, 2021, the company announced its next-generation battery module, which integrates Toshiba's LTO cells with Hyliion's proprietary technology advancements. The new module delivers multiple benefits tied to performance, including more than a 40% improvement in cooling compared to the previous system, up to 5 times longer battery life, and can be recharged in under 8 minutes. The new module design reduces the operating temperature of the cells, allowing for a safer operating environment, and has already passed UN 38.3 battery testing procedures. Building on Hyliion's proprietary battery system, the new battery module will be incorporated into the next evolution of Hyliion's hybrid system. Furthermore, the company sees possible additional use cases and opportunities to deploy this technology across other industries and applications. Now, their 2021 focus. Hyliion is providing significant value to current and prospective customers today through expanded commercialization and deployment of its hybrid powertrain solution. In addition, the company will introduce the next generation hybrid system in 2021. The system will feature the next generation battery module, incorporate a custom e-axle solution, and include enhanced onboard data analytics capabilities. Potential benefits of utilizing the next generation hybrid system compared to conventional diesel or CNG commercial vehicles include reduced fuel usage, emissions, idling, and or improved performance. Later this year, Hyliion plans to introduce demonstration units of the Hypertruck ERX, which can deliver net negative carbon emissions, greater acceleration, range, and significant cost savings, all the while recharging itself en route. Key commercialization milestones have been planned throughout 2021, including the initial build of demonstration trucks, collaboration with industry-leading fleet partners, and the deployment of test units within fleet operations by the end of the year. In tandem, Hyliion is developing powertrains that are fuel agnostic and designed to offer customers the greatest flexibility as they transition to electrified transportation. The company's solutions are designed to capitalize on the advantages RNG provides today, while being compatible with hydrogen fuel cells, well situating Hyliion to leverage hydrogen when the technology and infrastructure become available. In addition, Hyliion continues to invest in and explore additional strategic partnerships focused on commercialization of current product lines, disruptive technology, and talent acquisitions. Boom, there you guys go. He's saying it right there that this isn't going to just be for Class 8 trucks.
Once they're no longer good enough to really be used on highway applications, could we use them in other types of applications like backup energy?
Wow. The comment section, by the way, this guy here says, Lord Healy, bringer of green energy. So yeah,
Lord Healy, all right.
You've got a lot of fans in here.
Oh shit.
Now, Stelly over here on Twitter, Stelly823 had a question. He said, you gonna find out how the military's gonna use these 8-minute batteries? I think he's asking will there be, you mentioned the proprietary battery technology. Are you going to sell these to the military, have contracts with the military? Is there any forward look there?
Yeah, so I think when we initially kicked this off, the focus was, to start, was just on our own applications and using them there. But we see a lot of real-world applications where it can be used elsewhere, and it makes a lot of sense to use it elsewhere. So that is something our team is going to pursue, is looking at other opportunities on where these batteries make a bunch of sense. We were recently having a discussion even on ferries, right? The goal of a ferry is it goes a short distance and then it docks for a little while and it has to go back. Well, if you could have a battery that can recharge fully during the docking, then you can run that ferry 24/7 and not have downtime. And those are the type of applications where we see this making a ton of sense, and it's things that we're going to pursue as a company to try to really broaden our ability to get these modules out there.
So, company, we're on a mission. We got a video. Carbon intensity and reduce the green. Okay, maybe we don't. Thomas, tell us a little bit about the battery.
All right, I'll give you the true voiceover as opposed to the video voiceover. We just unveiled our next generation battery module. Some really exciting stuff with it. 8-minute recharge to be able to recharge the whole battery. We're expecting about a 5-time longer life cycle out of the battery module than conventional EV batteries, and it's safer. So, we're hitting on a lot of really interesting things here. As you guys know, the commercial vehicle space is all about uptime, keeping vehicles out on the road, keeping assets moving, running them 24/7. And when you think about being able to do a full recharge of a battery pack in about the same amount of time that it takes a driver to go grab a cup of coffee, you can really rethink how you deploy EV vehicles. Now, this battery module, we initially specifically designed it for our product, which the way the Hypertruck works is, and the hybrid product, you're constantly charging and discharging the battery throughout the day, right? You're generating that electricity locally on the
truck to supply the batteries with power. Now, that's why we designed it and used this LTO chemistry to be able to accept really high charge and discharge rates. But as we took a look at this battery module, we really saw that there's areas for opportunity to use it elsewhere as well, right? I mean, you guys can think of like a terminal tractor, for instance, where you're trying to run that asset 24/7. If your driver could get a full recharge in about 8 minutes, then you don't have to worry about having a truck down for a couple hours doing a recharge of the battery pack. So we see it opening up a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah, the battery pack there for the yard horse or the yard jostlers that you're talking about around the yards is amazing. The 5 times longer cycle, can you put that in layman's terms? What time frame is that looking like? What does that compare to, right? An hour to 5 hours, or what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we're looking at really is like how long the battery is going to live for, basically, right? And so, EV batteries, they start degrading over time, right? And, if you go buy a fully electric car, the amount of miles you can drive on day one of owning it versus, year 3 of owning it is different, right? The batteries have just kind of worn down some. And so we're seeing about 5 times longer that it's going to take until the batteries actually wear down. And so our goal is ultimately these batteries will actually be able to outlive the vehicles.
After seeing, the sheer bloodbath that happened yesterday, and Hyliion actually held up pretty damn well considering everything that happened. I really am starting to think, and this is my opinion only, I believe this is the bottom. So I'm staying in for the long haul, like I said, and I continue to say that in my videos. It's just for anybody that hasn't watched any of my other videos. I have 16 other videos right now on Hyliion. I'm just going to keep up to date with it, you guys, and release as much footage as I can and keep you guys in the loop. If I know something or if there's something I don't know and you guys want to share with me, feel free to leave a comment below. And, let's just support each other, you guys. Let's support each other through this, and let's see what happens with this company. I'm feeling really good about it.